Welcome, my dear friend. I'm so grateful that you are here with me tonight. This is a time that belongs only to you, a time to let go, to soften, to allow your body and your mind to drift into calm. I'll be your gentle companion on this journey. Tonight, we continue with the second episode of a tranquil 3-part series. It follows Matty, a warm-hearted traveler, as she enjoys the slow rhythm of life aboard a sailboat gliding across the Aegean Sea, those shimmering waters resting between Greece and Turkey, where blue horizons stretch endlessly. If you happen to miss the first episode, please don't worry. Each story is its own cocoon of peace, woven to cradle you gently into rest. And yet, if your heart desire, you can always return to the first voyage later. Next week, the third and final part will be waiting like a candle glowing softly in the night. But for now, let us pause and make a sacred little space for comfort, stillness, and sleep. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Hold it tenderly for just a moment, and then let it flow out like a tide receding back into the sea. Once more, draw in the air, filling your lungs with a clean, cool breath. And as you exhale, release everything heavy from today. Let it fall away like sand slipping through your fingers. Notice your body. Scan gently from the crown of your head down across your face, your jaw, your neck, your shoulders. Allow them to soften. Move down along your arms, your chest, your belly. Let each area release its whole. Even your hips, your legs, your feet, all unwinding, loosening, as if the boat itself were cradling you. There is no task left undone, no problem to fix, no demand on your energy. The day has finished its work, and the greatest gift you can give yourself now is rest. With one more gentle breath, draw in calm and breathe out any last fragments of tension. Allow your eyes to close or simply soften, and together let us set sail in our imaginations toward the southern seas of Turkey, where the story unfolds. This is where our voyage begins. Matty rocked ever so gently with the rhythm of the boat, her body swaying like a lullaby cradled by the sea. She stood inside the cozy wooden cabin, and before her stretched a buffet, so abundant, so inviting, that it felt like a morning feast prepared just for her. The small galley kitchen, narrow but warm, opened onto a counter where the food was arranged in a spread that shimmered with colors and scents. It was a traditional Turkish breakfast, and the first mate, who also happened to be the ship's chef, had clearly poured his heart into every dish. Golden pastries of paper-thin phyllo dough were stacked in little layers, their edges crackling like autumn leaves. Some were filled with soft, salty cheese, others with tender slices of seasoned meat. Next to them rested simit, rings of bread sprinkled generously with sesame seeds, their crusts shining as if kissed by the morning sunday. Beside these stood a neat stack of tiny pancakes, light and fluffy, waiting to be drizzled with fruit preserves, honey, thick molasses, and a soft dollop of clotted cream. Platters of feta and rustic cheeses mingled with bowls of plump black and green olives, their briny scent drifting into the air. A tray of fresh fruits, grapes, figs, and slices of ripe melon lay in a rainbow of color beside crisp cucumbers and juicy tomatoes. On another dish, scrambled eggs with tomatoes and herbs still glistened with steam. the aroma filling the cabin with warmth and comfort. But the breakfast was not complete. On a low wooden tray rested 3 shining pots, one of strong black tea chai, one of thick, dark Turkish coffee, and one filled with hot water for those who wished to soften the flavors. Tiny curved glasses stood ready nearby, their delicate shapes catching the light. A sugar bowl nestled beside them, and then the juices, a simple glass of orange juice, bright and familiar, and a deep ruby red sour cherry juice, its tart fragrance so refreshing, so uniquely Turkish, that Matty had come to crave it since her very first sip. She filled a plate carefully, a little bit of everything, just enough to savor each flavor. Then she poured herself a small glass of tea, the amber liquid glowing warmly, and alongside it a tall, cool glass of cherry juice. Balancing them with care, she climbed the few wooden steps, out of the cabin and onto the deck. The morning air greeted her instantly, soft, sunlit, carrying the scent of salt and warmth. She placed the glasses down on the long wooden table at the stern of the boat. Then she returned to fetch her plate, her bare feet whispering across the deck. At last, she settled herself on a cushioned bench, leaning comfortably against the cabin wall. She placed the plate before her, lifted the delicate glass of tea, and took a slow, savoring sip. Around her, the world stretched open and wide. The boat floated in a sheltered cove, just a breath away from the rocky shoreline. Behind the shore, the hills rose, covered with tough green shrubs, their edges softened by the haze of morning light. The water between the boat and the land shone with a turquoise glow, its ripples catching the sun like sequins on silk. Already, warmth was rising off the stones, but here on the boat, a gentle breeze stroked her skin, keeping her perfectly at ease. She lifted her glass of cherry juice, its tart coolness spreading across her tongue. For a moment, she closed her eyes, listening only to the quiet lapping of waves against the wooden hull and the distant cry of a seabird. It was the perfect beginning to the day, and she felt herself sink deeper into the gentle rhythm of life at sea. Matty let her gaze wander lazily toward the shoreline. The world seemed to move in slow, unhurried breaths. The gentle rocking of the boat, the faint shimmer of heat rising from the stones, and the quiet hum of the sea lapping against the rocks. Her eyes followed the curves of the land. Scrubby bushes clung stubbornly to the slopes, their dusty green leaves flickering. In the morning light, the hills were modest in height, yet they seemed timeless, like watchful guardians of the coast. And then, a flash of movement caught her eye. On the pale rocks near the water's edge stood a goat, white and weathered, its beard fluttering slightly in the breeze, its small horns just visible above its shaggy head. The animal stood so still, his silhouette etched sharply against the muted greens of the hillside. Matty paused, her teacup cradled in her hands, and smiled. There was something ancient in this sight, something that seemed to stretch far beyond this quiet morning. Her imagination stirred, and in an instant, she was carried thousands of years back in time. She pictured shepherds tending to goats along this very coast, their bodies draped in flowing togas, sandals strapped with leather thongs, their laughter rising and falling with the wind. It was easy to imagine the sound of a flute, its notes meandering gently through the air, the music of Pan, the Greek god of shepherds and pastures. In her mind, she saw him, half man, half goat, horns curling from his brow, his strong legs covered in shaggy hair. He moved among the bushes, a wooden pipe hummed, and from it came a melody that seemed to carry both joy and mischief, the kind of tune that could coax a traveler to dance beneath the sun, or perhaps to wander deeper into the woods. Matty smiled softly at the thought. It felt as if the land itself was whispering stories from another age, stories of gods and mortals, of lives once lived along these shores. For a moment, she closed her eyes and listened, half expecting to hear the faint trill of Pan's pipes woven into the sigh of the wind. But when she opened them again, it was only the goat she saw. It blinked once, turned, and disappeared into the scrub. The spell lingered, though. Matty felt a deep connection to this place and its history. Every rock, every plant, every ripple of water seemed alive with memory, with echoes of those who had once walked here. She let her shoulders relax, resting back into the cushion, and took another sip of her tea. The present and the past had braided themselves together, and she felt grateful to be here, a traveler suspended in a moment, both modern and eternal. The breakfast slowly came to an end, guests drifting away like feathers on the breeze. Some slipped into their cabins, some wandered forward to the bow, where sun cushions promised rest and warmth. Matty lingered for a moment longer, savoring the last sip of cherry juice before rising to her feet. The captain had mentioned that they would not leave for their next destination for at least another hour, an hour that belonged entirely to leisure. She stepped lightly toward the front of the boat. There, on top of the cabin roof, a row of soft sun cushions was spread out, inviting anyone to lie back and dream. A canvas awning stretched above them, casting patches of shade that danced gently with the shifting breeze. Matty chose a place near the edge, set down her book, and reclined against the cushions. The fabric was warm from the morning sun, and as she leaned into it, her body seemed to sigh in gratitude. She opened her book, but her eyes drifted often from the printed words to the endless expanse before her. The sea shimmered in hues of turquoise and silver, each ripple glistening as though painted by an unseen hand. The horizon blurred into the sky, and in her dreamy gaze, it looked less like reality and more like a watercolor painting, washed in sunlit yellows and ocean blues. Her eyelids grew heavy. She read a few more lines, but the words melted into the hum of the sea. So she closed the book and simply rested, her thoughts floating as lazily as the boat itself. After a time, the warm sun coaxed her to rise. She had worn her bathing suit beneath her flowing sundress, and now seemed the perfect moment to slip into the sea. Matty stood, lifted the light dress over her head, and set it carefully beside her book. She padded barefoot to the side of the boat, where a small staircase descended into the glimmering water. Each step brought her closer to the cool embrace of the sea. She lowered herself gracefully, then with a soft dive, slipped beneath the surface. At once, the coolness wrapped around her like silk, enveloping her body in a refreshing shiver. Tiny bubbles rushed past her ears as she glided downward, and then she rose again, breaking through into sunlight and air. She inhaled deeply, lungs filling with salty freshness, and began to swim with long, smooth strokes. The water lifted her easily, its buoyancy carrying her as though she were weightless. Each pull of her arms, each gentle kick of her legs, sent ripples shimmering outward, like threads of silver unspooling. She swam toward the rocky shore, each stroke steady and effortless. Soon the shallows met her feet, and she stood, the smooth pebbles pressing beneath her toes. The beach smelled faintly of sun-warmed stone, and just beyond, she spotted an olive tree, its silvery leaves whispering in the breeze. A faint trail wound up the hillside behind it, disappearing into the scrub. Curiosity tugged at her. What lay beyond that hidden path? But she smiled, choosing instead to let it remain a mystery, a promise of stories yet untold. With a gentle turn, she stepped back into the water and swam once more toward the boat. The sea was so clear, so translucent, that sunlight dappled the sandy bottom, dancing in patterns of liquid light. She reached the stairs again, climbing slowly, feeling droplets race down her arms and legs. As the midday warmth greeted her, the sun kissed her damp skin, raising goosebumps that melted almost instantly in the heat. Matty stretched out a soft towel and lay back upon the cushion, her body humming with the pleasant contrast of cool water and hot Sunday. The hum of the engine stirred faintly, the crew preparing for departure. But for now, she simply closed her eyes, letting the gentle rocking of the boat and the lull of the waves carry her to the edge of a waking dream. The low rumble of the engine stirred to life, a gentle vibration that hummed through the wooden deck and into Matty's bones. She didn't move. She simply lay there, eyes half closed, listening to the sound deepen and stretch. Not harsh, not hurried, but steady and comforting, like the heartbeat of the boat itself. The sunlight warmed her skin, tiny beads of seawater drying in the heat. A soft breeze slipped across her arms, lifting the edge of her towel, teasing her hair into playful wisps. For a moment, she let herself drift on the boundary between wakefulness and dream, her thoughts dissolving like salt into water. When she opened her eyes again, the world had shifted. The cove where they had anchored that morning was already behind them. Now, the boat cut slowly through open waters, heading toward a new curve of coastline. Matty sat up, wrapping the towel loosely around her shoulders. She leaned against the rail, watching the sea foam curl and melt. In the wake of the boat, each wave seemed to chase after them, only to fall back with a soft sigh. The view ahead was like a painting unfolding. The water stretched vast and turquoise, broken only by the pale trail of distant sails. Seagulls circled above, their cries sharp yet strangely soothing. The horizon gleamed, where sea and sky met seamlessly, both shades of blue blending into infinity. Gradually, a new shoreline came into view. This bay seemed greener, less rugged than the last. The hills wore a mantle of lush vegetation, trees spreading their shadows over gentle slopes. Here and there, clusters of stone peeked out, as if ancient ruins were hiding, waiting patiently for those who wished to notice. Matty let her gaze linger. There was something almost ceremonial about approaching a new harbor, as though the sea itself was guiding her toward fresh discoveries. She imagined how many sailors, centuries ago, had felt the same anticipation as they rounded a bend and saw a new shore appear before them. The boat slowed, the waters thickening into a darker calm. The hull cut softly through the ripples, until at last the anchor chain rattled, falling with a splash into the sea below. The vibrations ran through the deck, then faded into silence. As the vessel stilled, Matty rose and stepped toward the stern, and there, not far from the shoreline, she caught her first glimpse of something extraordinary. Stone walls, weathered, broken, yet still standing, rose out of the shallow water. Their bases were submerged, their tops jagged and uneven, but unmistakably human-made. Ancient ruins, half swallowed by the sea. The sight sent a hush through her mind and body. It was as if time itself had surfaced to greet her, standing quietly in the water, waiting to be remembered. Matty stood at the stern, her breath caught softly in her chest. The ruins lay before her, silent and weathered, their grey stones glowing faintly in the afternoon light. Some walls still rose high enough to sketch the outline of rooms long forgotten, while others had crumbled into uneven heaps, their edges smoothed by centuries of waves. The sea lapped gently at their bases, water curling in and out of doorways that once welcomed families or prayers or gatherings. It was as though the sea itself had claimed these halls as its own, preserving them in a slow embrace of salt and silence. Matty's curiosity surged when the captain announced that he would soon take guests ashore by dinghy for a guided hike up the hillside. She hesitated, her heart tugged toward the ruins instead. She longed to touch the stones, to feel with her own hands the marks of history that still lingered there. So she approached him gently, her voice soft yet eager. "May I swim to shore instead?" she asked. "Just for a little while, to explore the ruins before the group arrives." The captain smiled, a knowing twinkle in his eyes. He nodded his permission, and Matty's heart lifted like a sail catching wind. Without delay, she stepped down the side stairs, the cool sea hugging her once again. With steady strokes, she glided toward the ruins, each pull of her arms carrying her closer to the mysteries waiting ahead. Soon her feet brushed sandy ground. She rose slowly, water streaming down her skin, and walked the last few steps until the ancient stones towered above her. Up close, they were breathtaking, smooth from millennia of storms, yet still strong, still whispering the outlines of what once had been. Here, a narrow doorway. There, the suggestion of a window where sunlight must once have poured in. Green moss and tiny plants poked bravely from the cracks, their roots clinging to history itself. Water lines streaked the lower stones, marks of tides that had risen and fallen, season after season, year after year. It was like reading a diary written in salt. Matty stepped carefully through a gap in the wall, her feet sinking into the sand that had gathered inside the structure. The water here was shallow at first, just brushing her calves, but then the ground sloped and she found herself floating again, suspended within a roofless chamber. The sensation was magical. She was swimming in a pool, not crafted by modern hands, but by centuries of erosion and survival. Every stroke sent gentle ripples, dancing across the stone walls, the sound echoing softly like a whisper. She turned onto her back, gazing up at the sky, framed by jagged stone. The walls seemed to cup the heavens, as if this forgotten room was built for nothing but silence and sky. Her mind wandered. Was this once a kitchen, alive, with the smell of bread, or prayer hall, where voices rose in unison to the gods. Perhaps it had been a family's living room, filled with laughter and ordinary love. The questions hung in the air, and with them came a swell of gratitude. She was not only visiting this place, she was swimming in the living presence of the past. Time itself felt liquid, lapping at her arms and legs like the water that carried her. A vine trailed down from one wall, its blossoms a vivid purple blue that burst like stars against the stone. Matty drifted toward it, her heart swelling at the sight. The contrast of life and ruin, fragility and endurance, was almost too beautiful to hold. At last, she slipped through another doorway, back into shallower water. She stood again, her body gleaming with sun and salt, and stepped slowly out of the ruins, onto the quiet beach beyond. Behind her, the ruins remained, partly submerged, partly defiant, entirely unforgettable. Matty lingered by the shore for a moment, listening to the waves whisper against the sand. The ruins stood just behind her, their stones glowing pale in the late sun, their presence still humming quietly in her chest. From the water, she saw the small dinghy approaching. The rest of the passengers were aboard, guided by the captain himself, their figures outlined against the glittering sea. The boat slid gently onto the sand, its bow crunching softly into the pebbles. One by one, the travelers stepped ashore, their sandals and bare feet making light prints in the earth. Matty smiled as she joined them, her damp skin cooled by the breeze. Together, they followed the captain, who led them toward a path that climbed the hillside. The trail was narrow and dusty, lined with thick shrubs and wild herbs. As they walked, the air filled with earthy scents, rosemary, sage, and the faint sharpness of thyme that had grown untamed for centuries. Each breath felt grounding, as though the hillside itself was gifting them its fragrance. The path rose steeply, pebbles crunched beneath their steps, and the sun pressed down warmly on their backs. But Matty felt no heaviness. Her earlier swim had left her refreshed, and the dampness of her bathing suit cooled her as she climbed. Soon, they reached a small plateau, a lookout point where the earth gave way to a sweeping view of the bay. Everyone slowed, then stopped, their voices hushed by the vastness before them. Below, the cove curved gracefully, the turquoise waters cradled by arms of green hills. Tiny boats floated like white blossoms, their sails glowing against the sea. Motorboats left long ribbons of white in their wake, but from this distance, they seemed still, almost painted into the scene. The sky stretched endlessly above them, a luminous canvas of pale blue that deepened near the horizon. The air was alive with the faint hiss of the wind, a sound so gentle it seemed to blend with the rhythm of the waves far below. Matty shaded her eyes, taking in every detail, and felt the world expand inside her. The view was not just beautiful, it was humbling. It made her feel small, yet also deeply connected to everything around her. The group stood together in silence, some whispering softly, others simply breathing in the scene. Time seemed to pause, holding them all in a single, suspended moment. After a while, the captain signaled it was time to return. The path downward felt quicker, their steps lighter now. After the quiet gift of the view, Matty welcomed the breeze that cooled her skin, carrying away the fine dust of the hillside. Back at the shore, they boarded the dinghy once more, its gentle rocking reminding them that the sea was waiting. As they pushed off from the sand, the ruins slipped slowly behind them, half in water, half in memory, as the boat carried them back to the comfort of their floating home. The passengers stepped back onto the deck, their sandals tapping softly against the polished wood. The air felt warmer now, the sun stretching lazily across the sky, painting everything in a golden glow. The ruins lay in the distance, fading gently into the background, yet still leaving their quiet echo in the mind. Matty settled herself once more on a cushioned bench. She laid her towel out to dry and slipped into the simple ease of the afternoon. There was no schedule pressing, no hurry at all, just the open span of hours to drift, to rest, to be. Some guests chose to dive back into the water, their laughter mingling with the splashes. Others lay in the shade, books open on their laps, though many let their eyes close, too content to follow the words. The boat had become a floating sanctuary, a place removed from the noise of the world. Matty picked up her book again, turning a few slow pages. The sentences floated in her mind like music, but soon she paused, letting her gaze wander outward. The sea stretched infinitely, a quilt of blues and silvers, shifting with the wind. The air smelled faintly of salt and pine, carried from the hills. Later, she rose, drawn by the sparkle of water below. She stepped lightly down the ladder, slipping once more into the embrace of the sea. The coolness wrapped around her body, a soothing contrast to the sun's warmth. She swam slowly, not with the urgency of exercise, but with the grace of drifting, letting the water hold her, carry her, lift her like a lullaby. When she surfaced and looked back, the boat seemed dreamlike, a keyed vessel, resting patiently, its white canopy fluttering in the breeze. She floated on her back, watching the sky wheel lazily overhead. Clouds were scarce, but the sun had softened, its light turning the air honey golden. At last, she climbed back onto the deck, wrapping herself in a dry towel. The warmth of the fabric and the hum of the boat beneath her lulled her into a drowsy peace. She stretched out, feeling the afternoon slip by, as if time itself had slowed to match their rhythm. The crew busied themselves quietly, preparing dinner below deck. Now and then, the comforting aroma of herbs and roasted vegetables drifted up, mingling with the scent of sea air. It made Matty's stomach stir, not with hunger, but with the anticipation of another shared meal. She closed her eyes again, resting deeply, hearing only the gentle lap of waves, the muted hum of voices, and the timeless heartbeat of the sea. As the afternoon ripened into evening, the air softened, and the light of the sun melted into amber. Shadows stretched long across the deck, while the horizon began to blush with the first hints of twilight. From the galley below came the scent of dinner, rich and inviting. The fragrance of roasted vegetables, warm bread, and herbs floated upward, mixing with the salty tang of the sea breeze. It wrapped itself around the passengers like a promise, drawing them slowly to the long wooden table set beneath the canopy at the stern. The chef and first mate carried out platters, bowls of fresh salads, grilled fish glistening with lemon and olive oil, dishes of lentils seasoned with garlic and thyme, and baskets of still warm bread. The table became a tapestry of colors and textures, each dish reflecting the abundance of the coast. Matty joined the others, sliding into her place on the cushioned bench. Around her, conversations rose softly, travelers, exchanging stories about where they had come from and where they might go next. There was laughter, but it was gentle, the kind of laughter that feels like ripples on still water. She filled her plate, savoring each flavor slowly, the tang of the fish, the sweetness of tomatoes, the earthy richness of olives. All seemed amplified by the sea air, by the simple joy of sharing a meal in good company. Overhead, a single lantern was lit, its golden glow falling across the table. The rest of the world grew darker, the sea turning ink black beneath the stretch of an ever-deepening sky. The lantern light formed a warm circle around them, a floating hearth in the vast quiet of the night. One by one, the passengers leaned back, their plates emptied, their bellies and hearts content. Cups of tea and tiny glasses of Turkish coffee appeared on the table, steam curling upward like threads of silk. They lingered there, talking softly or simply gazing outward at the stars that had begun to pierce the dark. Time slipped away unnoticed. There was no hurry, no schedule, only the slow rhythm of the sea and the shared comfort of being together. It felt as though they were sealed away inside a bubble of peace, the wide world held at bay by the soft slap of water against the hull. Eventually, voices lowered. One by one, the travelers rose, bidding each other gentle good nights. The table cleared, the lantern flickered in the breeze, and the night deepened, wrapping itself around the boat like a velvet cloak. Matty too stood, stretching, her body relaxed from sun, salt, and food. She whispered good night to her companions, then drifted toward her cabin, but she knew she would not stay there long. The stars were waiting. Matty slipped into her small cabin only briefly, enough to change into a light cover-up that served as her nightdress. She brushed her teeth, splashed cool water over her face, and let her damp hair fall loosely around her shoulders. But instead of crawling into a narrow bed, she felt a gentle tug, pulling her back to the deck. The air outside was velvet soft, still carrying the warmth of the day, yet cooled by the night breeze. Above her, the sky stretched vast and endless, already glittering with countless stars. They shimmered like tiny lanterns, hung in the fabric of the heavens, each one sharp against the blackness that only exists far from city lights. Matty walked quietly to the bow of the boat, where neat rows of cushions had been laid out. She chose one near the edge, spread a light blanket across it, and placed a soft pillow at its head. Settling down, she stretched out fully, pulling the blanket loosely across her body. The deck rocked ever so gently beneath her, the motion of the boat cradling her like a lullaby. The air smelled faintly of salt and pine, and the only sounds were the soft slap of waves and the occasional creak of wood. She tilted her face upward and let her eyes wander the heavens. The stars were infinite tonight, so many that her gaze could not take them all in. Brilliant constellations traced their patterns, while fainter stars flickered at the edges, visible only when she softened her focus. Together, they formed a celestial quilt, stitched in light and silence. Matty felt her body sink deeper into the cushion, every muscle heavy, every thought dissolving into the vastness above. She had no need to sleep right away. There was no pressure, no urgency. She could let the night hold her, knowing that rest would arrive as naturally as the tide. Her eyelids grew heavier with each passing breath. She wondered idly Was it the salt air that made her so drowsy, the gentle rocking of the boat, or the simple truth of having surrendered all worries and demands of the day? Whatever the reason, her mind floated on the edge of dreams. The stars glowed patiently, their eternal light shining down as if to keep watch over her. With a final, slow exhale, Matty let herself drift, her heart steady, her body warm and tired, her spirit open to the healing gift of sleep. And as the sea rocked her gently and the night sky whispered overhead, she surrendered fully, slipping into dreams as calm and endless as the waters below. Matty stirred gently as the world began to glow. Her eyes fluttered open to a faint blush of light, stretching across the horizon. The stars, once so bright and countless, had softened into a pale scattering, their brilliance fading as dawn brushed the sky with color. The boat rocked softly beneath her, still steady, still humming with its quiet rhythm. Wrapped in her blanket, she lay still for a while longer, listening to the sea's low whisper against the hull. It was as though the ocean itself was breathing her awake, inviting her to rise with the new day. Slowly, the sky shifted from indigo to rose. Bands of lavender and peach melted into golden light, and the first true rays of morning touched the water. The sea mirrored the sky, turning into a canvas of shimmering hues, pale pinks dancing over soft ripples, golds flickering on the crests of waves. Matty drew a deep breath, the air crisp and cool, filling her lungs with salt and promise. She felt alive, yet still cocooned in the serenity that had carried her through the night. Sitting up slowly, she hugged the blanket around her shoulders. The deck was cool beneath her bare feet, but the sun's warmth was already stirring, reaching gently across the horizon. She could hear a few of the crew moving quietly, their footsteps soft, their voices hushed, respecting the tender stillness of the hour. For a long moment, she simply gazed outward. The hills that framed the cove were outlined in light, their shapes still softened by morning mist. A seabird cut across the sky, its wings catching the sun, its cry sharp but fleeting, like the day's first note of music. Matty closed her eyes again briefly, allowing herself to feel the gratitude swelling in her chest. The night beneath the stars, the endless sea, the gift of waking here, it was a memory she knew would live inside her forever. She rose at last, folding her blanket neatly and laying it aside. Her body felt light, renewed by rest, ready to welcome whatever the day might bring. The deck slowly came alive with gentle motion. One by one, the other passengers emerged, drawn by the soft light of morning and the comforting aromas drifting up from below. The first mate, cheerful as ever, was already at work in the galley, arranging another breakfast feast worthy of the sea and Sunday. Matty made her way to the long wooden table at the stern, choosing a place where she could face the horizon. The air was fresh, the kind that carries both coolness and warmth, a balance only found at the edge of daybreak. The water shimmered with pale light, its surface so still that it looked like glass brushed with gold. Soon the table was set. Bowls of olives glistened like jewels, platters of feta and fresh bread were placed side by side. There were slices of melon, a handful of figs, tiny jars of honey and preserves that caught the sunlight like amber, and again the ruby glow of cherry juice waited in small carafes, its tartness promising to awaken the senses. Steam rose from delicate cups of tea and coffee, their scents mingling with the salt air. When Matty wrapped her hands around a curved glass of chai, the warmth seeped into her fingers, a tender contrast to the cool morning breeze. As everyone gathered, a quiet joy seemed to settle over the table. They spoke in soft tones, as though not to disturb the peace that lingered from the night. The laughter that came was light and easy, woven into the sound of clinking glasses and the hum of the sea around them. Matty savored each bite, the crispness of cucumber, the sweetness of melon, the comforting salt of cheese. Every flavor felt brighter, as if the dawn itself had seasoned the food. When the meal was nearly finished, the captain appeared with a gentle smile. He carried a map, its surface marked with bays and coves, and placed it on the table. Tracing a line with his finger, he explained their plan for the day: a sail toward another hidden harbor, with time for swimming, for exploring, and for resting once again in the embrace of the sea. The passengers leaned closer, their eyes sparkling with quiet anticipation. Matty felt her heart stir too, a familiar mix of curiosity and calm, the joy of knowing that the day ahead would hold nothing but simple, unhurried pleasures. She leaned back at last, lifting her glass of cherry juice, and took a slow sip. The sun had risen fully now, its light pouring over the table, over the boat, over the wide, waiting waters. A new day had begun. The anchor was lifted once more, its chain rattling softly as it rose from the sea. The boat eased forward, gliding out of the cove like a swan, slipping silently from the shore. Matty stood near the rail, her fingers brushing the smooth wood, and let the breeze wash over her face. It carried the mingled scents of salt and pine, as if the sea and the land were whispering together in harmony. The wind was cool against her skin, yet softened by the warmth of the sun. As it climbed higher in the sky, the sails unfurled above, catching the morning air. They billowed with a low, contented sigh, and suddenly the boat leaned ever so slightly, finding its rhythm with the wind. The sound of the waves changed too, a quicker, livelier lap against the hull as the water parted before them. Around her, life on deck moved gently. One passenger sat with a journal in hand, sketching the curve of the hills as they passed. Another reclined with eyes closed, head tilted back, soaking in the sun's tender warmth. The crew moved quietly, their practiced hands adjusting ropes and sails, their voices low, their presence calm and assured. Matty closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the boat sway beneath her feet, the air alive with movement, the world expanding on all sides. The horizon stretched endlessly, a meeting place of sky and water, so vast and clear that it seemed to draw every thought out of her, leaving only stillness. She took a long, deep breath, and it felt as though the sea itself had entered her lungs, filling her with its rhythm, impatience, qui a promis. Time unfolded slowly, marked only by the shifting colors of the sea and the lazy arc of the sun above. The boat was not in a hurry, and neither was anyone aboard. Here, in this drifting sanctuary, the pace of life had softened to match the timeless cadence of the waves. Matty leaned against the railing once more, watching the foam curl and vanish behind them. It felt like the sea was erasing their passage, leaving no trace, as if their journey existed only in this moment. here and now, fragile and eternal, all at once. By early afternoon, the sun had climbed high, and the sea glittered with sharp, golden light. The captain guided the boat into another sheltered cove, a place hidden between green hills that sloped gently into the water. Here, the world felt still, as if the rest of time had been left behind. The anchor slipped once more into the sea, its chain rattling until silence returned. The boat rocked gently, finding its resting place. Around them, the water shone like glass, a blend of emerald near the shore and deep sapphire further out. Matty stood at the edge of the deck, the warmth of the wood beneath her bare feet, and gazed down at the clear depths. She could see the sandy bottom, softly shifting with the waves. The call of the water was irresistible. Without hesitation, she stepped onto the ladder and slid in, the sea wrapping itself around her with its cool embrace. She gasped lightly at first, then smiled as her body adjusted. Finding harmony with the water, she floated on her back, arms stretched wide, letting the sun warm her face, while the sea held her weightless. The world above blurred, sky, light, and sound melting together until all she felt was the rhythm of her breath and the gentle lap of the tide. Other passengers joined, their laughter bright, but never disturbing the peace. Some swam to shore, others dove deep, their bodies shimmering like silver fish against the sunlit waves. It was a chorus of joy, soft and natural, woven into the quiet symphony of the cove. After her swim, Matty climbed back aboard, wrapping herself in a towel still warm from the deck. She stretched out on the cushions, her skin tingling with the pleasant contrast of sun and salt. The boat seemed to cradle her, each sway pulling her deeper into stillness. Oars passed like moments. Some read in silence, some napped beneath the shade, and Matty simply let her mind wander, trailing thoughts like clouds across a wide blue sky. There was no urgency, no need to do anything but exist here, surrounded by sea and air and light. The afternoon deepened slowly, the sun softening into amber once more. The air cooled, the water darkened with shadows, and time itself seemed to sigh, settling into a slower heartbeat. Matty turned her face toward the horizon, watching as the day prepared to surrender itself to night, and she thought, with quiet gratitude, that these were the moments that linger forever, not loud or grand, but simple, still, and endlessly tender. As the day slipped into twilight, the golden light of the sun softened, spilling like honey across the water. The hills darkened into silhouettes, while the sea mirrored the sky, turning from sapphire to deep violet. The crew lit a single lantern at the stern, its glow warm and steady. It cast a pool of light over the long wooden table where passengers lingered after dinner, their faces gentle, their voices hushed with contentment. Cups of tea and coffee steamed softly, their aromas rising into the cooling air. Matty sat among them, her heart wrapped in the comfort of togetherness. The sound of conversation drifted like a lullaby, mingling with the steady hush of waves. The world outside their circle of light was vast and dark, but here, within the lantern's glow, it felt like home. One by one, the others rose, whispering good nights, retreating to their cabins with sleepy smiles. The lantern swayed gently in the breeze, its flame flickering, yet holding strong. Matty however, felt the pull of the stars once again. She wandered forward to the cushions laid out on the bow. The deck was cool beneath her bare feet, the night air carrying a hush so deep that it seemed to touch her very soul. She spread her blanket, rested her pillow, and lay down beneath the open sky. Above her, the stars revealed themselves fully, millions upon millions, stitched across the heavens, in constellations both known and mysterious. Some shone fiercely bright, while others twinkled faintly, as if whispering secrets only the night could hear. She breathed deeply, the scent of salt and wood filling her lungs. Her body felt heavy now, each muscle surrendering to the softness of the cushions, to the embrace of the rocking boat. The water leapt gently against the hull, a rhythm ancient and eternal. It blended with the cool night air, with the patient silence of the stars, until Matty felt herself dissolve into the fabric of the moment. Her thoughts grew slow and drowsy, slipping like pebbles sinking into clear water. She did not resist. There was nothing left to do, nothing to hold on to, only rest, only peace. As her eyes closed, she felt the stars watching tenderly, their eternal glow keeping her safe. The boat rocked softly, the sea hummed its lullaby, and the world faded into dreams. Matty surrendered at last, falling into sleep, deep, healing, and endless, like the sea itself.